Welcome, heathens and witches, to the Horn
and Cauldron
podcast. Yeah, we're back at it again. Thank you for joining us. We'll get the business out of the way real quick. If you're listening to us on your podcast network of choice, don't forget to leave us a review so we know you're listening. We're at 7 listeners. What's going on? Number 7. Probably. Honestly, it could be 1 and it could be 500. There's literally no way to know.
We're going to go with 7.
But I'm going to go with 7. I'm confident that I know of 7 people individually who listen. So that's what I'm going with. And if you listen to this on YouTube or watching us on YouTube so you can see our pretty faces or whatever, don't forget to like this video, comment below, share, subscribe, ring the bell, and do all that jazz.
Yeah,
subscribe. See what happens. It's okay. Also, we have a Patreon, so you can support us there. You'll hear more about that later. Don't worry. So let's just get right into... Oh my god, let me introduce us. I'm John Norgrove. This is Julie Norgrove. And clearly, I have not had enough to drink yet today. So...
It's definitely not enough to drink and not too much to drink.
Oh my god, no. Too much to drink is an elaborately large amount of alcohol. So, I've done it twice this week already. But yeah, let's get right into it. Today we are talking about technomancy, or the use of technology in magic.
Yeah. That's basically what technomancy is, the practice of using technology in your magical practice. Many people also call it techno-paganism, and urban shamanism is very similar, although ever so slightly different.
Well, I imagine urban shamanism would be like cans of spray paint.
No, but you're not far off.
Whereas techno-paganism would be like chat rooms. So that's where I feel the difference is on that. But also, like, I've never heard the term techno-paganism before. It's kind of dope. I mean, I feel like cyber-paganism sounds way more dope. So I'm just putting that out there, guys. Yeah. Remember, what is it? Bloody, that cyber Viking guy. Remember that guy? The dancing?
Oh,
the dancing guy from early internet.
Yeah. So techno-paganism is a term that is not as common as it used to be. Actually, technomancy is probably the most common of these terms. Mm-hmm. And technomancy is using you're using technology in your magical practice, whereas techno-paganism are pagans who also embrace technology. And then urban shamanism is someone who practices shamanic type magical things.
Yeah, but
like in an urban setting. Yeah. So one thing that I think that is particularly interesting about urban shamanism, which does embrace pieces of techno-paganism and technomancy, is that urban shamanism also has a belief that modern buildings and items have spirits, or like landvitir of their own. Yeah. So like that skyscraper, it's got like a skyscraper spirit.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, cool. Urban shamanism, huh? I would agree with a lot of that then.
Yeah.
Specifically with urban shamanism. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily consider myself a technomancer, although I do a lot of digital work, like specifically in the magical space side of things. It's more like technomancy is like, to me, technomancy, or like a term like techno-shamanism, or a techno-paganism and urban shamanism, I feel like the dividing line there would be like where your practice focuses. Whereas for me, technomancy is just one of several acts. It's like you're not a tarotmancer if you use tarot cards, but technically speaking, that's the right word.
Tarotmancer is a really cool title.
It's a tight title, yeah. But like technically that would make sense, like linguistically speaking, to be called a tarotmancer or something like that. So I feel like technomancy is like a tool in your arsenal as a techno-pagan or cyber-pagan or urban shaman.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Mostly. Also, throughout this, I'm going to be looking down, scrolling through the 8 billion subreddits I'm a part of to find the name of the subreddit that I belong to that's specifically about this.
Is it not Technomancy?
I don't actually think it is. I think it has a different name, and that's why I'm taking my time to scroll through.
Oh, so I cruised through a whole bunch of subreddits.
I mean, it might just be
information.
It might just be technomancy.
So the technopaganism, urban shamanism thing is kind of an aside. So the term technomancy actually first appears in
Technomancy.
No, stop it. The term first appears in a short story written by Steve Martindale. That's a short story that was published in a sci-fi journal. And I actually read most of the story. You can't find the entire story online, so I read like 2/3 of the story, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty fun. It is basically the TLDR of it is there's this wizard who is like in what I'm assuming is the fairylands, and there is this race of people who come in and basically colonize them and set up these like magic dampening fields. And the sorcerer that we're talking to is like upset about this because it dampens their magic, and also they've been colonized. So he basically talks to this barbarian at this local bar that he goes to, and they are like, we got to take these guys down. So the sorcerer gets the barbarian to go and get a he's calling it a grimoire, but it's actually a manual for like an electric like type of a device.
Sure.
So it's like a manual. He's get this grimoire.
Isn't a grimoire really just a user manual for your particular bend of
it totally
paganism
is.
Or
yeah,
whatever?
So he gets this thing, and then they're like, we have these things called wires, and we got to pull the wires. At this very specific time.
Yeah. Any sufficiently advanced form of technology is like comparably magic to those uninformed. And I think that perspective is the big important aspect of that like idea.
Yeah.
Right? Is that like if you're like what's that game that we were watching Super Beard Bros play recently? The one is it Horizon Zero Dawn?
Yes.
Okay. Horizon Zero Dawn, where it's like some sort of long in the distance apocalypse future, and everybody's very like Cloud Atlas talky.
Yeah.
And like all the animals are machines, which how are these people eating? But whatever. I haven't paid enough attention to the game, but nor have I played it myself. But like they got like robot animals, and like you can do magical stuff, but really it's just like fucking holograms and hacking and shit. So like, yeah, I mean, theoretically, even our modern level of technology would be like magic. And if you brought a modern iPhone to like the 1500s, they would burn you so fucking fast, dude.
Yeah.
They would just be like, this guy is such a witch. I'm going to immediately just rub some shit together, burst this dude into flames. Like, no, I'm not even going to yell about it. I'm just going to be like, no, boom, fire. Like, fuck that, right? That would be horrifying. Yeah. Could you imagine like a rock, like a weird rock that just glows with knowledge? That's nightmare fuel.
Yeah.
Right? To the uninitiated. Whereas we are all just like, meh, whatever, who cares? And this thing is like more computational power than like the Apollo rocket that took man to the moon.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, I mean, when you really think about it, like, a grimoire really does make sense to call computer manuals grimoires.
It really
because
does.
More than just keeping knowledge, they are the piece of like material storage that allows you to not only utilize that knowledge, but implement that knowledge in the best possible way, all right, to accomplish the task you're trying to accomplish. And I mean, other than the word technology, I feel like that perfectly describes what a grimoire is supposed to be. It
totally does.
You know what I'm saying?
It does. So it's a fun little short story. I wish that you could find it like more easily, but it's just.
Is it like a public domain short story?
No.
Oh, you gotta like buy it or whatever.
Well,
or it's
I don't
on his
even-
website or something.
No, it's not even that.
Mhm.
You have to try to find the original story, and then basically I had to look at a PDF of it. So what we'll do is we will put a link in the show notes for this, so that way anybody who wants to read it can. I would love to find an actual hard copy of this book or of this magazine. It's super fun. Like I said, I only was able to read about 2/3. It looks like a whole page, or at least part of a page is missing.
Mhm.
But I got the beginning and the end of the story, and that kind of allows you to put it all together. So it's super fun. So back to Technomancy. So
Right. So that's that story's name is Technomancy, right?
Yeah. So Technomancy is the use of modern technology in magic. But I mean, you got to think of it like you were just saying, like, if you were to go back in time, then it would be like a lot for somebody in ancient times to be able to like see even just like iPhones. But not only that, like you can even go to something that you wouldn't even, most modern people wouldn't really consider being technology, which is like lights in your house or devices that record, devices that play
Also
things.
magic, burn it.
Also just like a stove, a modern stove would be like would be like a use of technology and magic. So this term technomancy is really new, but you can sort of like look at it going backwards in time to see if it's even like, to sort of see further back.
Mhm.
Because right now, really, it means like using a computer or a device, some sort of electronic type of thing for magic. And in fact, it's actually pretty common for a lot of people to use technology even now, for using like a Book of Shadows or a grimoire or listening to us right now on whatever device you're listening to is kind of like technomancy. So it's really fun when you sort of think about all the ways
like you're doing
that
your
can
research
kind of like go
on a piece of technology when you're studying stuff, and I mean, so I would argue that magic is intimately connected with whatever sufficiently advanced technology that particular cross section of society has at any given moment. Even though obviously there are those who will like rail against technology in magic, and that's fine. Like do you, bro, or whatever. But like when you think about it, you're sort of it would almost like to do magic purely without technology. Like I'm only walking to I'm only going to the library and reading books and like totally like disconnected from the technological norm right now would almost be like what's it called when you're acting out history?
Like a reenactment,
like almost like reenactment levels of like magical practice, which again, I mean, that sounds awesome, right? Like why not? But it's an interesting way to think about it, where it's like, we of course we are specifically talking about like technology's use in magic, like TM, but when you think about it from like a significantly higher, like further away sort of a perspective, like everybody's at least a little bit of a technomancer.
Yeah, especially today.
Nowadays.
I mean, you could even go so far as to say, well, are you doing your magic in a room with electricity on, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Are you listening to music? Now, another common way that people think of technomancy is with with the Matrix. Is to sort of perform magic with programs and programming of computers and other electronic devices. So programs actually can, even in like now, can be written to perform a specific function or to give a specific result. But there's like not a lot out there otherwise for resources, although a lot of people do use computers and other devices as mediums. I mean, this term is, less than 30 years old. So it's kind of like looking for it's kind of like in the 90s when I was a little fledgling witch, like looking for more information about witchcraft, and there just wasn't anything. And that's really because a lot of the witchcraft TM stuff wasn't written until the 90s.
Yeah.
And even the previous stuff about Wicca was written in the 70s.
Harder to find simply because it wasn't like whatever, like the normal thing is that every library is going to carry or what have you. I mean, the internet certainly like exists as a series of tubes that connects everybody.
Exactly.
To like talk about it in the like older parlance. But I think that I would almost argue that the sort of like technomantic revolution was probably the late 90s, early 2000s, because there were a lot of movies that really blurred the lines between like technology, like computers and hacking, and like wizards and magic. Although maybe not in so specific a case. Like in The Matrix, at no point in time is there the assumption that he's doing magic.
Yeah.
Right? But at the same time, he's not pulling up a virtual keyboard and doing some stuff.
Yeah.
He's just like consciously aware enough of the virtual environment so as to cause or to like produce effect on it.
Yeah.
Right? So, but like I feel like I've read several science fiction like shorts from the like 90s and 2000s that specifically cover this, and I feel like I've seen a bunch of movies that like very closely like make this sort of like fantastical conclusion.
Absolutely.
I mean, I would argue that like technically Thor from the Marvel Cinematic Universe is a technomancer.
Yeah.
Because they openly say, even though like Doctor Strange does magic and Wanda does magic, right? They specifically mention that Thor and the Asgardians are basically so technologically advanced that they have magic.
Yeah.
But like they don't have to do techno shit with it. It's just that like they're able to like kind of hack the Matrix, as it were, like Neo style.
Yeah.
Because of some throwaway lines, and I don't know, I think Thor 2 or Thor 1 or whatever.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, when you put it that way, yeah, like that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and going back to the like timing of magical texts, most of the quote unquote defining magical texts that we think of today were written prior to the rise and ubiquitous use of technology.
Yeah.
So most of these texts, especially modern texts, some of them were written in the 90s, some of them were written in the 70s, more of them were written in the 20s, and even more of them were written earlier than that. And in episode 30, Spellcrafting, Book of Shadows, Grimoires, we talk a little bit more about this, but the printing press is really technically technology, but that is hundreds of years ago, so we don't think of it that way, because a printed book, easy peasy, right?
Yeah.
But magic users at the time were very particular about their magical books. So the printing press did increase the distribution of magical texts. However, people that were, shall we say, spellbook snobs, they prized
fancy
handwritten books over that. And you can see that
people
that
still do that today.
exists.
A lot of people today still say that your Book of Shadows or your grimoire needs to be like written by you or something to that effect, which, you know, I mean, like, not to get into that level of like, you know, discussion or whatever, but you do have in like, I mean, like a solid example, like an easier to deal with example is like, runes.
Yeah.
Right? What paint are you going to use on your runes, right? So like some people are going to say you can't buy runes. Right? You have to either make them yourselves or be gifted. I've also heard people tell me that you can neither buy runes nor can you make your own runes. They have to be gifted to you, which is very strange.
There's some similar information about that with tarot decks.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot more about that.
Yeah, we
in
talk
our
about
casting
runes
episode, which is episode 20.
Yeah.
As well as we talk about that also in the tarot reading episode, which is episode 7.
Yeah. But like, you know, like if you want a specific color, like my runes, I got like a very, very, very specific color where the pigment and like the substrate is like a handcrafted oil, and the pigment was like a powderized stone. Yeah. So like it's like as close to nature as possible, but it was still done by a machine. It wasn't like a dude with a hammer or something. However you make pigment. And paint and such.
It's just like a mortar and pestle.
Yeah, but just like wham, 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 paint. You just hammer a rock hard enough, paint.
That's not how that works.
That's how that works. Yeah, that's how that works. Bug shells, paint. Yeah. So, but no. So, like, again, it's one of those things where it's like, if you want a handwritten grimoire, that's great. Listen, honestly, I'm pretty jealous of the fact that you have the bold-faced confidence in your handwriting to write that shit on your own.
If I have to pick up a pen and write more than like a Post-it note's worth of stuff, my hand hurts.
It's not that I can't write a lot. It's just that my handwriting is hot garbage, whether I'm going slow and trying real hard or not.
Oh, my handwriting is atrocious.
You can ask my coworkers when I write notes on stuff.
I mean, I can ask you.
It's a nightmare.
How about my handwriting?
Yeah, it's not great.
It's
not
fantastic.
great.
I love my handwriting.
It's not great.
It's delightful. Yeah. And it's, I've been told that it's reminiscent of hieroglyphics, and I'm living for that.
I mean, I guess that's an achievable goal. I write in all capital letters, and half of my letters are strange shapes because I do single pass writing where I don't have to like pick my pencil up and down to do characters.
Do that.
Yeah. And so I can write faster because I had to do that when I was taking notes for security. So like I had to just like jot down as much information as I could as quickly as I could. Yeah. So like whatever. But like again, would I love to one day handwrite and like do those like beautiful like nature drawings in a grimoire? Of course I would. But I do abstract art and my handwriting looks like absolute fucking chaos. So instead of that, what I can do is I can use my immensely developed computational skills and just Photoshop that shit, because then I can make every single line exactly as perfect as I want it. Every color down to the pixel perfect as I want it. Everything's just perfect. And I'm obviously a crazy perfectionist about stuff. Clearly, I've spent the last 5 minutes complaining about my own handwriting.
Well, the interesting thing about that is that there are a lot of people out there who are very against using those particular methods to do a Book of Shadows or grimoire, whatever magic stuff it is. There's a lot of people out there who are either very against it or just like it doesn't quite feel right to them, or they haven't really thought about it, because you sort of think of magic and paganism and heathenism in this like modern day as like sort of like getting back to your roots and like going back to that, and part of that lends really well to going low tech, shall we say. But that doesn't mean that you have to. And some people I've seen say they don't like it because it doesn't feel natural. But
what if you're not a nature magic?
Exactly.
Practice?
So really,
like if you're practicing water magic, like you're a water witch or something like that. Yeah. Right? Like, can you use tap water? Do you have to buy Evian water? Is Fiji water okay? Right? I mean, those are all questions that you just have to ask yourself. Yeah. And then you make your rules. And maybe that means that one day the grocery store's out of the particular bottle of water that you prefer to use. Yeah. Right? So you got to postpone a spell or something, and that's fine, right? That's entirely up to you. Honestly, for me, it's the exact same logic as, do you buy bottled water or you drink tap water? Now, I understand that some people can't drink their tap water. That's perfectly reasonable, right? But like for me, I just drink tap water.
Yeah, we drink tap water.
We have pretty good tap water out here.
Yeah, we're lucky. We live in a place that has good tap water.
I drink tap water.
If we had unsafe or gross tap water, we would not be drinking tap water.
Yeah.
But this is one of those things where the choice of of technology, yes, no, and how much technology to use is really sort of up to you as the end user.
It's a super personal decision.
But at the same time, I do caution you to not make rules that hinder yourself. So don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Don't put up barriers in your own mind. Yeah. Everybody else around you is going to do it, so you don't do it.
Beautiful handwritten, good, grimoire. I almost said guitar. Grimoire.
I want one of them sweet handwritten guitars. Playing them blues and whatnot.
So, like, if you really want beautiful handwritten stuff, or you only want to do your spells, by hand with like fancy inks or whatever, that's totally fine. Yeah. But also, don't let that rule that you're making for yourself stress you out to such a way where you don't even want to do the magic stuff because it feels like so much work. So basically, allow yourself the ability to change your rules however it suits you.
Let me tell you about my journey with trying to journal. Yeah. I have like 5. I've never started one of them more than like 3 pages. So that's how that works.
Oh, yeah.
Because again, I hate writing. I hate my handwriting. And it's the future. I should be able to type shit up. Yeah. So that's exactly what I do. But yeah, it's really, it's in each individual their own sort of situation. Now, if you are listening to this and you have an opinion on it and you would like to share that opinion with us in a non-assholery based sort of way, please.
It's assholian.
Yeah, assholian sort of way. Let me know. I'm always very interested on this because to me, there's no good reason to separate magic from technology, and we'll get into why later on. Like where my opinions lie specifically on technomancy and
as
and
if
the
we
like.
haven't already heard your opinions.
Right. Well, not all the way, but at the same time, like, yeah, sure, of course, I would love to I know how to make paper. I would love to like make my own paper and bind it into a book with like leaves and shit imbued in the paper, and then like handwrite my own thing with like beautiful ink and shit like that.
Use a quill pen. The whole thing. The whole thing.
But every time I've ever used a quill pen, it's been a horrible mess, except for that glass one that I have. That one works. I have a glass quill. It's real nice. But it doesn't help that I still can't write good or draw good.
Yeah, see, I'm left-handed. Quill pens are not my friend.
You gotta do it like this.
But regardless, if you have
style.
Opinions, we definitely would like to hear them.
Yeah,
so
I definitely want to know where you lie.
Hit us up on social media. If you're watching on YouTube, comment. You can also, if you're listening on a podcast network, you can always go to the YouTube channel and then comment there too.
Or hit us up on social,
email us,
or send
works.
us an email, or you know what, leave your comment in a review. Just be like, I came here to review specifically this one episode. They're wrong. Ha 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 ha. I'll take that review. Homie, engagement is engagement, right?
Yeah.
You rue stuff.
So technomancy often appears in books, games, and anime, and other types of pop culture things. And it sort of appears in a few different ways. And one of those ways is magic that's used to power or control technology, especially like steampunky kind of stuff. You also see technology that is so advanced that seems like magic, something we've already kind of mentioned, as well as a combo of magic and technology. And before we give some examples of this, I want to talk to you briefly about Arthur C. Clarke. Arthur C. Clarke is a British science fiction writer, and in his writings, he created 3 laws.
Who doesn't know who Arthur C. Clarke is?
There's probably plenty of people. And in his writings, he created 3 laws. And now this sounds like, science fiction. That has nothing to do with magic. But with the right frame of mind, all of these things tie into magic. So the first law is when a distinguished but elderly scientist states that something is possible, they're almost certainly right. So just replace the word with scientist with magician.
Sure. Yeah. Practitioner. Mage.
Yeah. So the second law is the only way of discovering the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible. And isn't that really what we're doing when we're doing magic in the first place?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And now the last and actually most popular.
It's also how you advance science, but
that's
yes.
True. Yes. It's not to say these don't apply to science,
yeah,
but
I'm
saying they
both,
also
guys.
apply to magic. Yeah. There's a lot more overlap than you'd think. Now, the most popular and third one is any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And this really falls in line with the Thor thing. You see this frequently, and it's definitely true. So when you think about it, magic is in its own way technology. Now, there's another science fiction writer whose name is Larry Niven, and he has a quote that I want to share with you as well. It's not really a law, but he's basically riffing off of Arthur C. Clarke here when he says, sufficiently advanced magic is indistinguishable from technology.
Yeah. Larry Niven is, and I've read many of his books, and
I knew you'd be excited for this quote.
He is like, he walks the line in what is definitely logical technology and what is most assuredly magical ass stuff.
Yeah.
And in fact, speaking of I don't know if you've written this one down in here, but the Hyperion Cantos, which is arguably one of my favorite series of books, directly is magic and technology melding.
Well, and not just magic and technology, but also religion and magic and technology.
Yeah. Because I mean, the girl, the prophet, right? When she can listen to the song of the spheres and then like basically like find love in them, she's able to literally teleport across like vast cosmic distances with a thought. And that's just because she's able to touch a medium of space-time that in the book is inhabited by the lions, tigers, and bears. The only way that they're able to describe basically maybe gods, but definitely shit that can do god shit.
Yeah.
But that's like old and shit. So like, I never really thought about it that way, but that book is like straight hard technomancy.
It really is.
Yeah,
it really is.
dang.
Once you sort of think about it, you really see a lot of parallels, and there's a ton of parallels in science fiction. We're going to talk about some of these examples, but there's way too many examples for me to list here, and some of these things I'm not even super familiar with. But like, it's not just stuff that you see in sci-fi.
Yeah.
You also see it in anime. So like a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of slice of life. Little Witch Academia is a very popular anime, and there are two characters actually, but one in particular is Constanze Amalie von Brauschbank Albrechtsberger. Thanks, anime, for that. And this particular character combines magic with robots and laser guns, even though this type of magic, her particular type of magic, is forbidden by her magic school.
Yeah. Well, that's technopathy.
Yes.
Which is something that has always been very interesting.
Very related to all of this as
well. Yeah, I would argue that technopathy is just a specific type of technomancy, right? And that's just like how a telepath is able to like mind stuff. A technopath is able to like computer stuff.
Yeah.
In fact, like 3 of the stories I'm currently in the process of writing have technopaths in
Yes,
them.
they do.
So yeah, that's just one of those things. I feel like Elon Musk wants to put chips on our brains so we can control our cell phones, and isn't that just technopathy, but with more steps?
It is sufficiently advanced technology.
Less steps. So
maybe also a little baby brother, or big brother, but we're not going to go into that.
Whatever.
Now,
we have the robot that listens to our conversations.
Yeah. Another example from the fantasy side of things is actually Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
So at Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition introduced Eberron, which I believe is a place. And in Eberron, they have all kinds of things that are powered by magic, including trains and skyships and other mechanical objects that are powered by magic. And when I read this, because I'm familiar with D&D, but I'm not familiar with Eberron or the 4th edition specifically, but this really reminds me of the
2.5
of the example of the golems from Hebrew mythology.
Sure. Yeah.
Where they're basically, in the golem side of things, they're making a person out of clay and then imbuing it with a life force. But I mean, really, how different is that from building a mechanical creature?
Well, building a robot and imbuing it with a life force. It's exactly the same thing. No, completely. Well, and speaking of like trains and skyships and stuff like that, Magic the Gathering is especially in the books, right? Urza, which is one of the major planeswalkers, big character. He's part of the Brothers' War and all that kind of stuff. Fucking great books. He basically does technomancy. Like, he can use magic, but because he's like so mechanically inclined, the way that he uses magic is through like magic like imbued into crystals that animate machines that do like very specific things. And so he builds like ornithopters and these like big, like he literally builds a golem. That's part of like how he gets into the whole bloody thing is like him imbuing like using magic to imbue life into all of these pieces of artifice. He's an artificer. Is the term in Magic the Gathering. And on the exact other side of that, his brother Mishra is like a naturalist and is very into like engineering people, and he's basically the Borg Queen. Like he basically does the Borg stuff, but with magic. It's like the Borg plus magic, which is frankly just the nightmare form of the Borg.
Yeah.
So yeah, that totally happens in Magic the Gathering also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving into the video game side of things, there's an Overwatch character, and I apologize for those of you listeners who are very into Overwatch. I have never played it. But
played it a little,
there is a character whose name is Sombra, and she basically summons a keyboard that she uses to then hack technology.
That's gangster.
So, I mean, that's still definitely like magic because she's just summoning a keyboard out of nothing.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before, but She-Ra and the Princesses of Power is very, very techno-magey. We talk more about this in Pub Chat episode 1.
Yeah.
But basically, the entirety of the planet where everything takes place on is basically made of magic, but the magic is in such a way that it really flows with technology. And you actually see that in a lot of the artwork for it and a lot of the character design and a lot of ways that the characters use it. So
there's not really a beginning or an end. It's not like technology that controls magic. And it's not really like it's not like they put a bunch of technology here to control the magic, but it's also not that like they put a bunch of technology here to make magic. Yeah. It's sort of like magic and technology are like directly
are
connected.
Like the same thing.
Yeah, it's
almost
very interesting. Yeah. Also, wonderful show.
Fantastic show. It's only 5 seasons on Netflix. Highly recommend.
Yeah.
To literally anybody, even if you were not necessarily a fan of She-Ra from the 80s.
It's very different.
Very different stuff.
It's very different.
Now, Babylon 5 also has Technomancy, and in that they actually have characters that are called Technomages that sort of interface with technology in what appears to be or is either actually a very magical way. I'm not as familiar with Babylon 5 with the Technomages.
I've seen it all the way through, but like once.
Same here.
So like, I do remember them having Technomages. And speaking of Babylon 5, and before we move on to the next one, you also have Andromeda, basically has like Technomages.
Yeah.
You also have Dune, basically has Technomages. They not only have Technomages, but they got straight up Techno Shamans that are like mad tripping balls and hallucinations. You also have Warhammer 40K, which is straight up low def fucking technology tearing holes into magic to make shit work.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's how the Emperor's immortal
Chronicles of Riddick.
Chronicles of Riddick.
Where they use very specifically death or wind magic in it.
Well, the wind magic lady is an elemental.
Yes.
Right? And then the whole visiting death thing is just that, whatever. That's some stuff. So like, there's a ton of shows. Yeah. But then next up, obviously,
is Star Trek.
Star Trek, yeah.
Now, for me, I know you've got probably a lot of words because it's Star Trek, but for me, what I see that's very magical about this is particularly sort of tied into this episode 2 of Picard, which is currently airing on Paramount Plus, and season 2 of Picard, whatever words. And that's Q and the Watchers. So for people who aren't familiar with Star Trek, in 2 sentences, what is Q?
What? Okay, it's not really a what, but that's okay. Q is a group of sentient god level entities. That's really it, right? It's exactly that simple. They all go by the name Q. They live in a continuum called the Q continuum. They are infinitely powerful. With a snap of a finger, Q can do everything from change your outfit into a different outfit, to change Wesley Crusher from a boy to a man.
To going back in time.
To going back in time, to snapping his fingers and literally bringing the Borg all the way across the galaxy. Like a whole grip of these motherfuckers. All the way over here. So
if that's not magic, I don't know what is.
Well, there is no technological connection at all between the Q and the technology of the time. Like there's no explanation. Q are just gods. But you do have other things like that in Star Trek. So like, for instance, the Vulcans can perform mind meld. So Vulcans have like telekinetic powers and like telepathy and such like that. And so do like betazoids and stuff. But using technology, you can take technology and use it to either like dampen some stuff, like dampen specific brainwaves in the receiver, so that way like there's less chance of the Vulcan performing the mind meld. I believe Tuvok does this to save somebody, like maybe Harry Kim one time or something, to be able to like dampen the mind meld. They've also used technology in Chakotay when he uses a technological device to help him reach his spirit guide place for his people. You also have like you also just have like weirdly long-lived people who use technology but are also like vaguely magical. Star Trek has strange energies. They're just called strange energies. It's one of my favorite parts of Star Trek, and if that shit touches you, you just gain godlike powers, a la that episode of Lower Decks or Gary Seven from the original series, depending on like where you fall as a Trekkie.
Yeah, you can also meditate so much.
Oh my god, yeah, you can just meditate hard enough to become a god
basically.
in Star Trek. Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into that.
There's a lot of both mutual respect and use of technology in magical and religious practices in Star Trek. I mean, like the episode where those interdimensional like bug angel things were like tearing holes in that ship, that like other Federation ship was lost in the Delta Quadrant, they were all evil and whatnot. That piece of technology, that like worship totem, literally just emits a frequency that lets those things in. But without the like pan flute or whatever the people that they stole that from have, and that pan flute like calms them, so they just like show up and like go like woo, and they're like religion or whatever. Right? I don't remember. That was like the very beginning of that episode. But like whatever. Right? So but like without that they weren't able to do anything. And even though this species recognized that these were like religious this was religious technology and religious iconography, right? That ship of very, very evil non-Federation Starfleet officers also realized that these angel creatures are made of like mostly gangster plasma energy. So if you just like summon one and capture it in a pod, you can just like juice it.
It was horrifying.
To run your warp core at like way higher rates than it's supposed to, because their ship was like 150 years away from the Alpha Quadrant, or the Alpha Quadrant, because they were only like a warp 7 ship instead of like Voyager, who can do like 995 cruise, which is ridiculous. But like, so I mean, technology and magic in Star Trek are directly connected. Continuously, religion and technology are directly connected, and they even address like in DS9, there's an episode where they figure out that the Bajorans built a wooden vessel that used this special cloth that was solar sail cloth that like was imbued with some stuff and constructed in such a way where like they were able to, by using like solar wind or solar flares or whatever, they were able to travel at the speed of warp all the way from Bajor to Cardassia in the Gamma Quadrant, which is super gangster, right? It means that they developed warp drive before they understood what warp even was, purely as like a function of religious accident, sort of, which is a really fun episode, and it's a really cool wooden ship. You know? So, there's a lot of connection there.
I'm sure you can talk for hours on Star Trek and magic.
Oh my God,
but I'm going to move on. So earlier we talked about the Matrix, we talked about Neo, but Neo isn't the only character in the Matrix that really sort of blends technology and magic. And this is really sort of like where an entity is bending technology to their will in basically a magical way. So that's the Oracle, and I mean, honestly, like basically any of the big characters, like the Merovingian, the dude in the room.
Well, the Merovingian isn't even a person. That's the best part, is that the Merovingian, much like Agent Smith, are pieces of technology that seem to have almost achieved magical levels of property, right? Because especially the Merovingians, who are immortal programs, right? Even though they're not supposed to be. And Agent Smith, who is supposed to be a simple program, but through interacting with Neo, gained enough sentience to break free from his programming and evolve consciousness. And then with that consciousness and awareness of the fact that it is only programming, be able to fucking toe-to-toe fight literally a god in the Matrix in the form of Neo, as well as move outside of the Matrix, not only to occupy people, horrifying, but also to occupy other robots. And let's all vaguely disregard that one time Neo was out of the Matrix and used his in-Matrix powers, which either means we're in two Matrixes, which is not my favorite answer to that, or two, it's literally that his force of will, his understanding of the program is so great that even at a distance and not directly connected, he is able to alter the Matrix from afar, right? Which is its own very cool like cosmic magic thing.
Yeah.
With regard to like technomancy, because Neo is straight up a technomancer.
Yeah.
Like no questions about that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Going a little bit more low tech in the technomancy side of things is a movie called The Skeleton Key. And in it, basically, this chick ends up having to be a caretaker for this old guy and his wife, and they live in this old home. It's in the bayou. It's very spoopy stuff happening. And like spoilers, but this is like easily a 15-year-old movie. But like really the end result is that they're doing magic on this woman to take over her body so that they can use her body again. And they are able to do that through playing a record. It basically does the spell and does all the things. So, I mean, looking at it from a 2022 perspective, that's not very technologically savvy. But if you were to look at that from any other perspective, really, they were just using the technology to make that magic happen.
Yeah.
If this movie was remade and put into modern times, they would be using like an MP3.
Yeah.
Or
well, you would make the argument
something.
then that Chucky is technomancy.
Yeah.
Right? Because he freed his soul and bound it to a doll, right? Yeah. Less the new Chucky, because the new Chucky's just like you program the doll for murder but then put it behind a firewall.
Yeah.
Or whatever the hell that was on about. Obviously Jason X, but we don't need to talk about that. For very obvious reasons, although I personally love that movie.
Yeah.
Like half of the Leprechaun movies.
Yeah.
Especially Leprechauns in Space. What Leprechaun 4, I think, is the one where they're in space. I love all the Leprechaun movies to death, by the way. They're so ridiculous. I love them. But when you think about it, actually a fair amount of horror movies use some function of technology. I mean, arguably The Ring, right?
Yeah.
An evil spirit is stored on a flippin' VHS tape.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I would also venture to say that there's just a lot of movies in general.
50% of all zombie movies are
that
some
are
sort
magic.
of technology gone awry.
I think the Fast and the Furious movies, I think that they use essentially what is the law of attraction, meaning you visualize it, you attract that to you.
They would be mechanomancers, not technomancers.
Mechanomancers.
They would be mechanomancers. Yeah, except for there's one character who does like hacking and stuff like that. But for the rest, they're all just mechanomancers, and arguably they're just straight fucking wizards because cars and physics do not work.
They're
that
basically
way.
using the power of family to make.
They're just like he's so confident in his badassery that he's just able to like bend reality. You know what? Triple X. I'm putting it out there.
Yeah.
Triple X.
Yeah. Well, also
and also
not just the Thor movies, and it's particularly Thor 2 when they talk about technology being so advanced.
Yeah.
That's when Jane is in the thing with the cancer. But really, because we know that exists in Thor, we know that exists in other places throughout the Marvel universe, and that's very well documented in the movies, where the sort of technology and the magic sort of combine, even if they're not necessarily calling it out. Yeah. So, so
Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
Right. Well, any of the later Iron Man suits where he just like touches his chest and nanites pour out and cover him in fucking gangster. But in Thor 2 specifically, they have the extremist virus, and in the movie
in
Iron Man 2, the extremist virus. In the movie, it's like just a virus, and they don't really talk about it so much.
Yeah.
But in the comic books, it's straight nanites.
Yeah.
That like unlock everything and like make you like super powered. And like you're able to like throw fire and like control technology at a distance and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, that's exactly what that is.
Yeah, yeah. So as you can see or hear, that is, there is a ton of ways that technology is used in pop culture, and really, it sort of shows how, even though this is such a new sort of term, how prevalent it is in today's society. Yeah. And technology in general, if you haven't already been convinced, is a great medium for magic, a great tool for magic for those that are technically inclined, as well as actually for those who are closeted practitioners.
Sure.
There's a lot of privacy.
Password
that
protected
technology
journals.
Gives you.
That kind of stuff. Totally.
And coming back to the sort of it's not natural thing, technology does use electricity electricity,
Yep.
right? And electricity is a form of energy, and that is part of the magical thing. But there's also electricity that's
It's a real
found
useful form of
elsewhere
energy.
in the world. So, there's a lot.
It's not just that technology uses the movement of electrons, right? The like lifeblood of reality itself. But like your computer is full of precious metals and slivers, like it, I mean, it's like a mechanical watch uses gems in it.
Yeah.
Uses sapphires in it, right? So your mechanical watch, if sapphire is a stone important to your practice, would literally act as like a beacon for collecting magical energy. Your computer is full of like palladium and silicone and copper and iron and gold and all these precious metals. It would not be hard to put together a list of the necessary material as a generalized proportion in your cell phone or laptop, and then look up the correspondences for that and to find like what things have meaning to you. In addition to the fact that like your laptop's black, my cell phone case is purple. Purple's an important color to me. Like our cell phone backgrounds matter. Yeah. I mean, like I make witchy backgrounds for our patrons. Yeah. When I get around to doing it. But I make like witchy backgrounds and stuff. So you can like make symbols and stuff on that. I have done symbol magic on a computer, like making like symbols, whether it's for like specific spells or divination on computers, literally since before I was a practicing pagan. Like while I was still a practicing Catholic, I would do that just because it was easier. Yeah. So like, for me, it's a very intimately connected part of my reality, my magical reality, as it were. But yeah, I mean, all of this technology is made up of a lot of the same stuff that this back here is. Yeah. Right? Yeah.
So now that we've convinced you, maybe, now we've got some ways to use technomancy. And that the reason why we have a whole bunch of ways for this is, one, to share this information and this knowledge, hopefully to either give you the courage to try it, or the idea to try something specific, maybe get outside of your box, but also because there's not a lot of resources out there with this stuff. I had to do quite a bit of weird digging in this episode and try to separate quality from not quality, and also from fiction and satire.
I mean, it's only fiction until it isn't, right, guys?
Exactly. So we've got a bunch of ways to use technology and to be sort of like a technomancer. Yeah. So the first of those is probably the easiest and probably the ones that most people are doing, and that's to store your Book of Shadows or your grimoire on a device. Yeah. Whether that's a computer, whether that's your phone, whether it's the cloud, whatever.
Password protected app, or if you're a patron and you don't have a grimoire or a Book of Shadows, but you just download
the grimoire pages.
You're just downloading our Book of Shadows pages. Well, there you go. You're a technomancer already. You just didn't know it yet.
Boom.
So there you go. Bam.
That's it. You're done. That's the end of the episode.
Next up is the use of AI generated apps to create sigils or art as a compunction of meditation or creativity or like spell binding or something like that. This is something that I do a lot. Yeah. I do this primarily as a function of like creative meditation. Insofar as I use an app called Wumbo. We have no association with this app. I found it like entirely randomly. Somebody that I follow on Instagram posted an image and I was just like, this is amazing. Yeah. What is this? And they like hashtagged Wumbo, and I was like, well, that's not a word I've ever heard before. Why don't I look that up? And I downloaded the app and I use it like almost every single day. It's a real problem. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see them in my stories. So follow me on Instagram. You get to see all my weird artistic creations in Wumbo. And Wumbo's just, you give it a prompt and you set your artistic parameter, and then it outputs an AI generated art form following those specific details. And there are more advanced ways to do AI art, a thing that I would love to get into. If you know how to do it, what's up? Be friends. But yeah, so AI generated art for sigil magic or like worship or any sort of practice like that is definitely one way to use technomancy.
Yeah. You can also either in conjunction with that or separately use a picture of a sigil or a spell on your phone or like your computer as a background or a lock screen.
Yep.
And every time you look at it, it kind of powers that again and again and again.
Yep.
And
Yep.
not only that, it reminds you of what it is that you're trying to do with that.
A thing that we actively do all the time.
Yeah.
After that is the use of electronic music, whether that's like binaural beats or guided meditations or
like lo-fi.
like lo-fi, like chill, like lo-fi, like
I exclusively meditate to like electronic lo-fi.
yeah, totally. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, we listen to like all sort of music, right?
Yeah.
But I often will meditate to like lo-fi or like techno or like cyberpunky sort
not
of music.
affiliated, hashtag not an ad. But I prefer Astral Throb.
Astral Throb is
on
really good.
YouTube. This person has like individual songs that are shorter, but they also have a lot of longer things.
Long form playlists.
And it's like 30 to 50 minutes and it's perfect for me.
Yeah, there's another one that I like too.
You can
that's just
also
like
record
Astral
your
Throb.
own meditations, especially if you're doing a guided meditation. So that's definitely another way to use technology and the magic.
Yeah.
And
binaural beats are straight up technomancy.
Yes.
Right? A lot of these binaural beats are like, oh, I don't know the numbers. Don't quote me on these. It'd be like 539 hertz, activate alpha wave, or like open up your whatever chakra
pineal
with
gland.
or
Yeah,
pineal
your chakra.
gland or whatever. Like that shit happens all the time. I listen to a ton of that stuff by the by. And there's so much really good like combination of like Eastern practice music combined with like binaural audio and like specific frequency like manipulation and like techno to make these like really interesting like dynamic things. It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah. You can also use like electronic divination. So you can use an app that draws tarot cards or runes. You can
have
also
an app that's associated with a deck of tarot cards I have that not only lets you draw tarot cards on the app, so you don't have to use the deck like if you're not near it, but also lets you. It has like an AR function, augmented reality function, where if I like use my camera phone like over the tarot card, it becomes this like 3D thing, and you can access like deeper information into like the star clusters that are drawn on the tarot card and such like that. It's a very cool piece of tech. It's a very cool idea. Great artist, absolutely fantastic. It's Muzo Designs or something to that extent. Oh, that tarot deck's buried.
Well, you can also use random number generators or also true random number generators to for divination, either by assigning things certain numeric values, doing sort of a numerology side of things, but you can also tie in those random number generators to something else. So bibliomancy is where you take a book and then you open to a random page and you choose a random line in it or sentence, and that helps to answer whatever divinatory question you had. And you can use RNG in conjunction with that. So you've got a book, or you've got 10 books on your shelf, and you can say, okay, RNG a random number between 1 and 10. It's 5. Okay. Now you go to the 5th book, you see that book has 400 pages. So now RNG 1 to 400, you found your page. And then you count how many lines are on a page. Let's say there's 30, RNG 30, and then it's the 30th line, and that gives you the answer to your question. Of course, that's a quite complicated way to do that. It's really not. It's actually quite simple and very easy. But that is a really interesting way that you can use that. You can also RNG tarot cards, or an oracle deck. So you just count how, so you say
do a random number generator like
1 through 78 on the tarot deck,
yeah.
and then it's like number 55, and then you count to 55, and then that 55th card is your answer.
Yeah.
So you can use a lot of ways to not only use the random number generator thing, but also sort of like tie that into more physical methods.
Yeah. There is, speaking of bibliomancy, there is a website, and I do not remember the name of this piece of technology, but there is a website that basically uses like an algorithm to. This website is basically like, from a purely mathematical standpoint, we can calculate and figure out exactly like what would happen if we combine all possible letters and numbers in all possible iterations, including like spaces and like periods and stuff like that. So you can like look up your name and it'll be like it shows up 80 million times. Like here are the top ones.
Yeah.
You can look up whole sentences and it'll be like this sentence showed up here. So you can totally use that for, and I have done that, used that for like a sort of bibliomancy. So yeah, you can totally do that. You can also use, instead of visualizations, like you could basically use technomancy instead of visualization. Jesus Christ, I can't even think. So like if you're not like a seeing pictures in your head kind of person, then you can like basically just like, okay, you need to focus on a pyramid. You need to focus on a pomegranate. You need to focus on a particular god, and there's a statue of them in Athens that you enjoy, or whatever.
Even if there's
just
a spell,
Google that and then focus on that image.
And the purpose of the spell is, for like more money or a better job. You just have that image, and then you just sort of gaze at that. Yeah. We talk a little bit more about seeing things in your mind, in your mind's eye, in our 1-year anniversary Q&A, episode 27. Yep. This is particularly helpful for people who can't see things in their mind's eye, which is called aphantasia. And you can also, sort of like tying into the visualization, you can also scry by looking at either an image or a GIF until you sort of see something. Or you can also use the black reflective screen of your phone or perhaps your monitor instead of getting a black scrying mirror. Yeah. Of course, you can also learn coding too. There is a lot of really, really interesting ways that people who practice a lot of technology with their magic use coding. And in particular, there is a program that's called Scratch. It's built by MIT, and it's designed to help the average person create a simple code program with drag and drop segments. And you can find a ton more about coding and magic by visiting the website Technomancy 101, which again, not affiliated. It's a really, really cool resource that sort of gives you an intro to a lot of stuff with technomancy, and also gives you a ton of ways to use technomancy in a way where you either need very little or you're able to sort of get up to speed very quickly with what you want to do with that magical stuff. Yeah.
You can also use images or videos to like loop them either as single focuses or like to loop them for like meditations or for visualizations. So like let's say if you put together like a photo album and put it on your TV, then you would be able to like, while you're doing like particular spell, you have those photos playing. And you could also, and like we literally do this for our rituals, we'll find like a music that we're vibing on, like for the particular thing that we're doing magically, like just on YouTube or whatever. Yeah. And just like put that on. And I'm gonna be real with you. Sometimes the algorithm gods are like, what's up? You're just gonna be in the pocket with like the pocket of like Celtic chants or like Enya or like whatever, Danheim or whatever it is. Or whomever it is. And sometimes we'll be like halfway through a spell and it's just like, what's up with like this comedy song
or 90s R&B.
Sup with like Kiss from a Rose. Middle of this spell, Kiss from a Rose. And you're just like, gangster. I haven't heard that song in like a while. I don't know why you're serving that to me, but clearly it's needed. So I guess whatever. I'm going to kiss a rose on a grave or whatever's going on with that guy. So we'll go watch Batman. But so yeah, you can definitely use like you could basically like set up loops, presentations, self-presentations, whether it's like videos or GIFs or loops or photo loops or whatever, to act as like a tool for meditation or your particular magical practice.
Exactly. Yeah. You can also, of course, I mean, now that we're in the panini and we've been here for a while, you can do panini, like a Zoom call with a coven for like a spell or a ritual or Sabbat work. That's definitely a way to do it. You can also use what are called servitors. This is something that's really popular and very commonly used in chaos magic, which we will talk about in depth in another episode.
There's
a lot of really, really interesting stuff about chaos magic. And
there's a lot of bold opinions about chaos magic out there. Let me tell you what, sometimes I'm reading a thing about chaos magic and I'm like, It's weird that you have such a bold opinion about some shit I've never heard of before.
Yeah.
Gangster.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm reading stuff about chaos magic and I'm like, someone needs a therapist.
Yeah.
Honey,
but that's not magic,
its own
that's
thing.
you.
So you can also create servitors, and servitors are essentially automatons that are
Robot
created by your mind and by your magical powers to basically achieve something. So imagine in a more physical sense, you want to create a machine that's going to go and get a bucket of water from the well.
Sure.
Every time it just goes and gets a bucket of water from the well. Every time you say,
what is my purpose? You bring the butter.
Yeah, every time you say spaghetti.
Yeah.
So you say spaghetti, the machine goes and does the thing. So think of the servitor. I'm just picking random things coming out of my mind.
Awesome, the organization.
So when you create a servitor, you're basically creating a magical construct that is at the prompting that you basically choose to do the action that you want.
Yeah, that's a very complicated way of saying use programming and coding, but in your own head.
It is basically
a thing that I
magical
literally actively do. So yeah, all the time. Right? Not so specific as a robot that gets water because I said spaghetti or fucking
I don't know.
Right? But I mean, you can use like coding structures to help you refine your magic or define a particular task that you're trying to undertake magically, right? Another term I would use for that, even though I would imagine many people would argue with me, is gamification. If you are gamifying your magical practice, you are probably using mental servitors to do that.
Yeah,
right?
Probably.
So bam, that.
Yeah.
So you could also read magical texts or old grimoires, obviously, through the internet. Because of the internet, everything is available everywhere all the time. It's awesome, guys. We're definitely not stressed out about it. There's too many things going on right now.
There is a lot of things, yeah.
But so there's like Sacred Text Archive, which is sacred-texts.com, yeah. I don't know who this Twilit Grotto
the Twilit
is.
Grotto is esotericarchives.com. Both of these websites have a huge wealth of occult and religious texts that you can read for free. And that's their whole game.
I have so many websites that I use just for Norse shit. Like, not even a little bit of other shit, just Norse shit. So that way I can be like, this guy says this way, and this person says this way, and this person says this way, and this is how I'm going to decide to say it.
Yeah.
You know? Like, 100%. Like, that's totally a thing that you can do.
And you can also use, like, Kindle, either the machine or the app, to read, books that you've purchased from, like, Amazon, that sort of thing,
or the
too.
Ing.
Yeah.
So next up is you can build magical spaces online, whether that is through like literally what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Right? As like a magical community, or like physically build spaces a la like Minecraft or like any other like sort of game, whether it's like a VR game or like a MMORPG sort of a game where you're able to like craft and construct. You can like build magical totems into that. That's like super common to see. Is stuff like that.
Yeah, also digital art.
Yeah.
As well as, other AI generated type of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can also use Pinterest for your Book of Shadows, or more interestingly, make a board for like a specific spell.
Yeah.
And you can have private boards too. So this is especially great for people who want to use technology and who are closeted, because you can build a board that's money spells or love spells or whatever the thing is, and you just fill it with those items. You can do a lot with it. So not just a spell drive, it can of course be your repository for information. Yeah,
there was a lot of like Book of Shadows style info out on Pinterest.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. There's also like blogs. Some can be set up for restricted access. So I believe we use Squarespace to host our website. Again, no sponsor, but that's just what I use for our website. I'm almost certain I can keep like private blogs on there. Yeah. I don't know how to do that, but whatever. But like, so you can definitely make like private blogs.
Yeah.
Or to that end, also, you could also make magical social media accounts.
Yeah.
We, in fact, have several friends who have like their regular social media and then they're like magical social media.
Yeah.
Where they just like talk about like magic and spells and stuff and just like keep it separated.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah. You can also use your passwords for magic. So like you're logging into something online, you can use a mantra or a devotional prayer for your passwords. Of course, you would want to make these so that they're password safe and not easy to get or, you know, that sort of thing. But, you know, if you have a particular mantra, you can maybe abbreviate it in some way, use letters, use numbers, that sort of thing. That's a great way to do it because I know I type in my passwords all the time. Yeah. All the time.
1,000 times a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, that's a really good idea. You can use a sigil if you have the like motion style unlock, you know, like where you can be like these are the numbers or motions that I'm gonna make, you know, like it's a motion on an Android phone. If you're doing the like swipe unlock thing, you can make the swipe your like sigil.
Yeah.
So every time you unlock your phone, you're just like doing like, you know, Naruto jutsus. You just doing Naruto jutsus with your hands. You know, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you think I'm sounding crazy. But if you watch Naruto or have seen Naruto, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
You can also use thumb drives. I mean, of course, you could use like a hard drive on a computer, but you can
just
also
put
use
a spell on it,
thumb drives. They are don't do that.
Don't put trash
throw
out
trash
there.
in the woods. Yeah. They are great for holding a book of shadows, but you can also use them as basically a portable spell jar, particularly smaller thumb drives, which are pretty cheap, and you can get a variety of decorated.
They also
ways.
make encrypted thumb drives.
Yeah.
Right? And they are very encrypted, these encrypted thumb drives. So, yeah, you can totally do that as well.
Yeah. So what you would do if you want to use a thumb drive as a spell jar is you basically decide your intent, and then you grab all of the items, all the pictures, all the images, all the files that you want.
Super genius. Yeah.
And then you basically put them into a folder and you name that folder.
Yeah.
And then you imbue that with your magic. And then you can carry that thumb drive around with you in your pocket. It's probably not going to break and be as dangerous as a tiny glass jar. So that's certainly a way to do that. And
if you get a nice thumb drive, like a one that's got a good shape, you could probably use some Fimo clay or some sort of glitter decorations or whatever, and you can decorate that shit up so it looks even more magical. Now I want to get a bloody USB port for my computer set up over here on the altar so we can just be like boop 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 boop, just engaging spells.
And you can use different thumb drives for different things, but you can also use the same thumb drive, and then you can have like an active spells folder and an inactive spells folder, because really it's all about your intention and what you believe it to be doing.
Yeah. I'm just shooting from the hip here. All right, listen. What you do is you get one of those picture frames, you know, them robot picture frames that you can get at like Target and like Costco and shit. If you get like one of them robot picture frames, right? And then you put it on your altar, right? And then you get your, just buy like a 50 pack of like 4 gig thumb drives or 2 gig thumb drives. You know, like Christmas time, those are like a nickel a piece or whatever the heck, right? Get like a bunch of those. And then each one you can load with a spell jar, right? You like load with images for a spell that are dope that you've like got together. And like you could even include Word documents or like sigils you made yourself in like Paint or Photoshop or what have you.
Yeah.
Right? And then decorate the outside of that shit. And then whenever you're performing a particular spell, you just unplug that spell from the visual indicator on your altar and plug in a new one. I'm dead fucking serious. We're gonna buy that stuff. Like maybe tonight when we're done with this. It's so smart. I never thought about doing that. It's so smart. No, I love it. It's great. It's rad.
Yeah. Now, don't forget about emojis also. You can use them to augment your spell work. And one way that you can do this is you can actually text yourself.
Sure.
So you would just put your phone number or, you know, if you have
or set a reminder on your phone.
Yeah.
Or a calendar invite to do magic.
You can basically use emojis. I mean, really, they're just like symbols. Yeah. So there's really nothing different there. And you can create a whole spell of it, or you can augment your spell work with the emojis, however you want to do that.
If you know that around 2:00 in the afternoon, when you only got a couple hours left of work, or 3:00 when you got a couple hours left of work, you get and you're getting down and stuff like that, you know what you do? Set a little calendar invite or a little reminder or a little notification or whatever on your phone. So every day at 2:00, Monday through Friday, it sends you a little picture of a symbol with some magical words attached to it, or whatever. And there you go. I mean, that's magic, right? If magic is intent based, then like every day at 2:00, like a silly cat appears on your screen that's telling you to like live life moss, then, you're going to do it. So that's how that works.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can totally do that. And lastly, definitely not leastly, but lastly, at least on this list, is flipping memes, man. You can save memes, you collect them, you can share them, you can make your own damn memes. There's a lot of magical content out there right now on the internet. TikTok and Instagram are fierce with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, dude, magical memes are where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, magical memes.
Now, one last thing that ties into the memes, but also ties into a lot of these things too, is a lot of people who practice technomancy also power their sigils, their spells, whatever it is that they're doing, with additional energy by putting them online. So this can be done in a variety of ways, and it can be done in a very low-key way. So for instance, with the memes, maybe you create a meme and that meme is really a spell, but what you're doing is you're going into like paint or whatever, and you're first putting a symbol or the word that you want to use for your spell, so power, and then you put the meme on top. And it's like, yo, dog, I got you.
Just a meme. I understand.
Just,
you don't need to,
whatever the meme is.
You don't need to do that to yourself. Don't even worry about it.
I'm not going to
do
it.
Go past.
And then you basically are putting that meme out.
Yeah.
So every time somebody sees that meme, it is powering your spell. And this kind of works with a lot of this other stuff too. So anytime somebody sees your magical work, it is additionally powering.
Yeah.
That's not to say
again, assuming that you're part of a practice where you believe that that's the situation.
And you're comfortable with doing that. So that's not to say that you have to do that.
Oh, no, you just
But it is a very common practice for people that practice technomancy.
Yeah, is to just put magic inside of everyday stuff. That is the subplot, one of the subplots of that modern day magical practice series of books that we read last year. Where the secret government Illuminati wizards put spells on the dollar bills, so that way every time you spend American money, you power their spell, and it generates so much power they're able to create their own microcosm, like a micro universe within the US that exists where like time doesn't flow or something. So they can leapfrog through time and still control the world or something. It was like a year ago that we read this book.
Very good book.
But it was really good. And they do a lot of like technomancy sort of stuff in that. Yeah. So next up is what do we do technomantically?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Technomantically.
I feel like technically that's the correct way to say that. So I'm gonna stick with it. So you're up first. What technomancy do you do?
Well,
dog?
Obviously we do this podcast, so I do a lot of research for it, and all of my research materials, or at least I'm going to say 90% of my research materials, are in technology somewhere. They're virtual, they're in the cloud, or they're on a drive, they're on a device. So all of my resources are electronic. A lot of the spells that I write also remain electronic, although I don't write down the results of the spells electronically. So that is a slight difference and change for me. But I'm very into this idea of getting one of those frames. In fact, we'll probably need to, because I'm going to want one also.
I know.
But I also do use a sort of like sigil for the unlock on my phone, and I also use like pictures on my background and my lock screen for magical stuff. I've done a variety of other magical stuff before too. I've definitely put sigils or spell work online for other people to help power, and just sort of like a variety of things over time. Totally.
Yeah. It's basically the same thing. I mean, I've kind of always done magic vaguely connected to technology, just because, like, again, I'm real good at Photoshop.
Yeah.
Right. I can make web pages, so I know how to do, like, you know, hide stuff in web pages, and like, you know, I've done the you know, I write all of my magical work is written digitally. It's either written, like, spells and rituals are written on my laptop in like Word documents, and then like my tarot reading and like any sort of magical work that I'm doing is written in several different note apps on my cell phone.
Yeah.
Although I should get one like that's just specifically and only magical. I'm not that organized right now. That's okay. Also, I do a lot of sigil crafting on my laptop. Sometimes I just get like a spur of the moment idea for like a sigil or a design or something, and then I like turn it into a design. Half the time I share those on Instagram.
Yeah.
Right. And obviously we talked about like I use Wumbo, and so, you know, I do a lot of magic connected with technology, and I know that a lot of people are sort of like antithetical to the idea that magic and technology can be connected, because magic should be some sort of connection to nature. And I agree that there is magic in nature, but there's also magic in technology. I would make the argument that like everything is magical in some way or another, and it's mostly a function of intent. If your type of magic is drinking half a glass of water and leaving it all over the house, well, guess what? You saved your family from aliens. We saw that movie. It was Signs. It wasn't a great movie, but like it was an okay movie. So I don't know where I was going with that. It just turned into a Signs reference. I was not in charge of that.
You're making fun of me because I was building a robot that gets water when you say spaghetti, and you're over here with M. Night Shyamalan.
I'm pretty certain Signs won some awards, so bam, right? I mean, I haven't seen Signs in a long time. Maybe it's a shit movie, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, so I do a lot of that sort of stuff. And as a general rule, what I would say to people who are questioning the idea of including technology in their practice, or who are sort of like raving against the use of technology in practice, the difference between a piece of paper and a computer is, from a purely molecular standpoint, basically nothing. I mean, computer's more complicated, but it's kind of all basically the same thing, right? It's a device what with you put the intention of you creating onto, right? The surface of, right? And the screen has like lights so you can see it and shit, but light is also energy. If you don't believe that, turn on a real bright flashlight and look right at it. Don't do that. That's really bad for your eyes.
Yeah, don't do that.
Like, we are currently under studio lights and my brain is on fire. So, because I don't like bright light, and so I'm basically just rendered blind for a little while after every time we do these podcasts. But yeah, it's real bad. But so like, yeah, I mean, from my standpoint, the way that I have always looked at it and thought about it and addressed it is that there is no discernible difference from using a computer and using a pen and paper at all with regard to magic. And it's because the magic is about the intention. And okay, well, what if you want some amethyst? Well, you could have a picture of amethyst, A. B, you can put a piece of amethyst on your computer. You just set it there. Boop. Right? I mean, so, like, does that count? Or near it.
You could have a sticker of amethyst.
Yeah, you could get like a thin like sliver of amethyst and like put it somewhere on your computer.
Oh no, I meant like a sticker you could also that somebody designed.
You could also literally decorate your computer with stuff. My computers are always decorated with stickers and all sort of other accoutrement because I'm one of those people. I like stickers on everything. So yeah, I've never seen a logical separation between magic and technology that makes any sense at all. Like, yeah, sure, if you're trying to do a dance under a tree spell, go fucking dance under a tree. That makes complete sense. We've all done it, right? But like, if the spell doesn't require that level of specificity, or if your spell requires you to like wander through an oak forest and you don't have an oak forest near you, well, Google Earth probably fucking does. Yeah. So wander that way,
and if you have an Oculus,
hell, you might even discover some weird shit. Google Earth is discovering people are discovering shit on that all the damn time. Mm-hmm. So like, you could totally do that.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, if you have an Oculus, there's a bunch of like dope psychedelic meditation stuff. So to get back before we move on to the spells and whatnot, so the subreddit that I like on, like, there's technomancers. The subreddit that I like is cyberdelinauts, which is the utilization of technology and psychedelics for magical practice.
Yeah.
Right? For the like advancement of human consciousness, which is really, really interesting. So, and that's another thing that like this obviously has nothing to do with like the use of psychedelics, but like using technology to enhance your utilization of psychedelics, if you're using psychedelics, is something that one can do. But again, technology, it's just a tool. A cell phone is just a tool. A laptop's just a tool. The internet's just a tool. This camera that we're recording onto and this microphone we're recording
Notebooks
onto
and pens
are
and
tools.
paper are also just tools.
Yeah, and books and pens and paper are also just tools. So really, it's just where do you want to put your concentrated effort into, right? And I would argue that, like, no matter how, like, I have a ton of books. I have a ton of stuff. There is nothing more intimately connected to me than my cell phone and my laptop. From a function of just constant use.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we watch the TV all the time, but we're not interacting with the TV as much as we interact with our laptops. We're not interacting with the stove as much as we're interacting with our laptops. We're gamers, so like that's why, right? But like your laptop is connected to you, and that connection helps facilitate that magical use. And the more magic you do on it, the more research you do on it, makes this device like an important part of you. Yeah. Right? And you know, I would make it's sort of like talking about like, you know, some people pray to the oil pan, like their church is working on their car. Yeah. Right? Or they pray in the garden and their church is working in the garden, right? Or, you know, that sort of a saying, if you remember that from like the early 2000s, late 90s kind of a thing, right? I heard that a lot as a kid. And it's like, from my perspective, that's the internet. That's the technology. I've always pushed to stay, you know, as bleeding edge as I can, technologically speaking, right? And 99% of the time, I don't even throw away an old laptop. I keep that shit. Yeah. Either in perpetuity or I disassemble it for arts and crafts parts because I am very weird. And I make arts and crafts out of the bits, and the hard drive gets put into my larger storage computer, like my hard drive computer, right? So that way all the information and like its memory basically lives in cybernetic infinity attached to like my greater reality, digitally speaking. Yeah. All right. And its parts get recycled in, its memory and its, you know, if I can reuse the CPU for something, and if I can't use it for something practical, I use it for something creative and artistic. And I mean, like, I talk to Julie about this all the time. As a kid growing up, and we always, you know, I mean, I grew up, it was a lot of hand-me-down tech and secondhand stuff. And, you know, dad's really like technologically savvy. So it was a lot of like building our own computers from scratch and doing stuff like that. And it's like, if something broke or something didn't work, or we found an old piece of tech that I couldn't revive, I made art out of it. Yeah. And I used to keep like, oh, the VCR broke. And it'd be like, well, the VCR's broke. And I'd be like, so that's mine now? And dad's just like, yeah, just don't make a mess or start a house fire. And then I would just take it apart and like scavenge the coolest bits, and then just like recycle everything else. Yeah. Right. And like keep the coolest bits and then make these like trinkets that meant so much to me as a kid. And I think about it now in hindsight, and it's like I've always sort of been a bit of a technomancer with regard to the way that I interact with technology. And it's only now that we get to like live in the sweet, sweet Star Trek future where like my watch tracks all of my like physical like outputs, you know, calories and steps and heart rate and all this kind of stuff. And my cell phone, you know, collects all this information and gives me access to this like greater, vast, rich knowledge. And my laptop is this connection to like decades and decades of research and knowledge and images. And like sometimes Julie and I will just like, I'll boot up my working computer, my hard drive computer, and it'll just be like, let's look at like go to the hard drive, go to pictures, and it's just like, look at all these pictures. It's history, you know? Yeah. So it's one of those things where like all of that stuff, assuming you give it meaning, can have a great deal of meaning to you because it's a journey. I mean, every computer that you've ever owned has lived its entire life as like a vessel to carry you through like technological like manifestation. Yeah. Right? Through like hyper realizing like greater knowledge than is ever possible for mankind before like literally right now. Every minute we are getting like more connected to information than ever before. It's crazy. Right? And so like I understand like if you're not cool with technomancy and stuff like that, like that's cool. Like, no, no hate, whatever, right? Everybody's got to find their practice and like find their thing. But at the same time, like, don't just disregard a cell phone or a laptop as like a chunk of plastic and silicon. It certainly has a lot more potential if you give it the ability to have that potential. I mean, just now with the picture frame and the flash drives, that's a fucking great idea. I am so happy with that. We are 100% doing that, my dude, right? Because I am constantly that whole room is just pictures that I think are dope hung up on a wall. So we would save a lot of space if I could just put those on a flipping little screen over here. You know what I'm saying? So like, that's rad. That's very rad.
Well, and if you want to get started, we have 2 spells, which are a pretty easy way to sort of ease yourself into Technomancy if you aren't currently doing it, or if you are, sort of maybe give you some ideas as to other things you can do. So like you had mentioned, our phones are very intimately connected to us. It's always like, where's my phone? And, there's definitely problematic aspects to feeling that way.
If you think your phone isn't connected to you, set it down. And then go spend all day shopping and hanging out with friends and going out to the bar or the club or the restaurant or whatever the heck. And you're going to get home and just be like, oh, thank you. I'm connected. I know what's going on now.
Time to scroll social media.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, so...
It's evil, but it's awesome.
So this first one is a pop socket talisman. So what you'll need for this is a pop socket, any sort of stones of choice, glitter, charms, anything you want. You're also going to want 2-part epoxy and some toothpicks. Yeah. So what you're going to do is you're going to remove, obviously you're going to want to get a pop socket that you don't care that you're covering up. Yeah. So you're going to want to remove the flat part, the top part of the pop socket, the part that actually sits in on the outside of your hands.
That's a twist and pull off motion to remove those, by the way.
Yeah. Well, you want to remove the flat part entirely. So you want
not the whole pop socket, right? You still want it to be able to like sticky to the
just
phone.
The top part.
Just the like disc of color.
Yeah. So remove that flat part of the pop socket and then put it onto some newspaper or some scratch paper or whatever. And then lay out your gems, your charms, whatever you're going to do to sort of model your design. Now, once you're satisfied, take a picture of the design with your phone. And that's because you'll forget.
Yeah. That's because she forgot. She knows.
Yeah, I know. I've done this. So next you'll squeeze about a quarter-size blob from the epoxy tube. And the 2-part epoxy, when you squeeze it, both pieces come out at once. So it's really technically 2 quarters, I guess. But squeeze about a quarter size.
But yes.
No, squeeze like about a quarter of each.
Oh, okay.
Size blob from the epoxy tube, and then mix it thoroughly with a toothpick. At this point, if you're using glitter, which I do recommend because 2-part epoxy generally dries kind of yellowy, and you're going to want to have something that's extra zhuzh. So squeeze a quarter-size blob from the epoxy, mix it, and then once it's thoroughly mixed, add your glitter. And if you're not like a glitter person, employ color magic instead of thinking it's glitter, right? So if you've decided that the talisman is like your personal like power talisman, which is the way that mine is, you can choose it'll be kind of shiny anyway, but choose a color that means something for you. So like for John, he would probably choose purple glitter. Yeah. And it's not that he's choosing glitter, it's that he's choosing purple. So
I would use purple paint and just delicately paint around every rock because I hate glitter with a fiery passion that consumes
you can also
my
do
soul.
that too. Yeah. So now
I have an airbrush and a lot of very expensive masking tape for tiny models. Trust me, I will paint in the details. I ain't using fucking glitter.
So once you've mixed your glitter or paint or whatever you're going to do, now coat the top of the pop socket with epoxy. There's still going to be some left over probably, and that's totally okay because you're going to be using most of it, if not all of it. So carefully and quickly place the gems and charms on the pop socket using the picture, if you need to, as reference. And while you do this, meditate on the meaning behind the items that you're using. Word of warning, the epoxy stuff generally dries fairly quickly. So you are going to want to work quickly, but not recklessly. Yeah.
Also, if you do epoxy resin stuff, or if you don't and you don't know this, you can get pigment powder for epoxy resin that blends in to make it like a more solid color. You can also get like translucent colors in the form of alcohol inks for that. technically you could probably just squeeze alcohol ink out of the back of a fucking pen.
Probably. Yeah.
But again, that's like your crafty, like how crafty are you comfortable with being? Because we're pretty crafty.
Yeah. So at this point, you've got everything on there. You can take the toothpick and you can kind of like grab the rest of the epoxy and then add it to the edges of the pop socket or to any areas that look like they might need extra hold. Don't be afraid of getting rid of what it is that you need or what you don't need, that is, but try not to have to mix more epoxy.
Yeah, because the drying times will be different.
Yeah.
So that's not super helpful.
Yeah. And then this is probably the most important part of all of it. Allow this to cure for the full amount of time listed on the package. That's usually between 24 and 72 hours. Yeah. This is the most important.
It can be longer.
Yeah, it can even be longer.
Yes.
So whatever the manufacturer's directions are there, use those. Because if you're trying to mess around with this thing and it's not fully cured, you are going to make a terrible mess and you are probably going to ruin the beautiful thing that you just made.
Yeah. And or get it on your skin, and getting epoxy off your skin is not as easy as
it is a pain. Yes. Yeah. And then once it's fully cured, put the flat part of the pop socket back on and then attach the pop socket to your phone. And now this pop socket can act as a personal totem. You can even make multiple ones for like specific intentions.
Yeah, the newer pop sockets, the socket part is stickered to your phone. But the pop part, I don't know which part is which. The flat tablet-y colored part.
It's usually the part that's like decoratively designed.
Yeah, I don't have a pop socket on my phone. I use a magnet so I can like attach my cell phone to things because I'm one of those people who's like, oh, do you need a thing real quick? Click, and then just walk away. And then hopefully I remember that. I've locked my pop socket in the restaurant like 4 times. Legitimately, I've had to have the bartender open the restaurant for me like 4 fucking times. I'm very bad at remembering my cell phone because I just magnet it to shit. Yeah, the modern pop sockets, you can like twist off the thing without taking the whole sticker off your phone to replace it. So you could like just buy a bunch of cheap ones. Yeah. Right? Like gray or white or black or whatever the base color is for those. Yeah. And then make like a bunch of different spells and just twist them on however you feel. I'm feeling a little Dionysian today. Click, bam, you know? Yeah. Yeah. So, whatever. Like, yeah, that's totally reasonable. And that's a good way to like store spells in the form of like little jewel discs.
Yeah. You could also mix herbs into the epoxy. However, the epoxy, when it cures, may discolor the herbs. So they may look like gross little brown chunks.
Yeah. It's an exothermic reaction. So it tends to heat up. Even a thin amount of epoxy like what you'll be using definitely has a chance to discolor stuff. But you could use like herbs or bits of petal or something. You just have to be prepared for those to discolor. If you are overly concerned, you're not buying a quarter-sized dollop of epoxy. That's like literally impossible. So, like if you want to use like rose petals to give your epoxy like a red flaked coloring, but you don't like glitter or whatever, just whip up a little coin of it on like a piece of white printer paper or whatever. Yeah. And sprinkle some dried rose petals in it, and then stir it up, and just like let that shit harden. Does it look good still? All right, well then you're good to go. Yeah. Right. So. Like experiment, and if you do this, share it with us on Instagram or on social media. Tag us on social media so we can share it with our followers and be like, look at these dope magical pop sockets. Do you still have your magical pop socket?
I do. It's actually attached to my work phone. Nice. And in writing this, I'm like, ooh, no, I need to change this back to my own phone. I've been getting tired of my phone case anyways, which has like a built-in pop socket, which I just hate. It's not in, I don't have like absurdly small hands, but I have small hands and a large phone. Yeah. So it needs to be placed in a different spot.
I wish this had a pop socket because mine only has a tiny ring with which to hold. Yeah. But I also hold like just the most tiny amount because I have
I also have my phone mostly sitting like flat on a table, and having the pop socket in the dead middle means that it's always like wobbling when I'm using it. It drives me nuts. So yes, I do that. I have used that. I am going back to that. I definitely love.
You just have to make a new one.
Pop socket. I don't know about making a new one. I love that one so much.
Just make a new one and then just put that one here. Just mount it.
I mean, maybe I'm gonna also.
I bet that's the right size. Actually, you could just mount a bunch of pop sockets on this.
Oh, maybe I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. Yeah. So the next one is another your phone type spell. Although you could use this for a computer background as well. So you're going to do basically you're basically going to do some light digital spell jar. So first you're going to,
in the form of a phone or computer spell background.
Yes.
Yeah, she didn't say the thing that made that clear.
Yeah. So first you're going to decide what the purpose of your spell is. And then once you've decided that, you then do some research and collect images and symbols or anything like that, all that also fits your purpose. Now, once you have all of that information, or maybe even before that, because you can, with some of these, sort of get additional images, use photo editing software like Paint or Photoshop. You can also go online and use Canva. Canva has a lot of free resources that you can use there. And then
use Microsoft Word and just stack all the images. I remember doing... I used to write GIFs in PowerPoint. We used to make stick figure, like, remember when stick figures were fighting was like hot on the internet? Remember the old days? You use PowerPoint for that. Yeah. There's a way to make make GIFs in PowerPoint. Yeah. So we used to do that when I was in school, and like we would make like you would make these like decoupage style collages in Microsoft Word, and then print them at the library, and then you could slide it into your binder, and you would have this like dope art thing. But like, I don't own all those magazines. I'm not made of money. I don't have magazine subscriptions, right? So I just like cutting out pictures digitally and posting it on the thing. I mean, like 100%, dude.
Yeah. So use the software and then assemble the background to your liking. And then once you're satisfied with it, say, I charge this image with the power of whatever the thing is that you're trying to do. Its existence shapes the energy around me, causing my spell to manifest. Every time I see it, the spell is recharged. As above, so below. As within, so without. Now, save it and set it as your background or lock screen or whatever. And every time you look at it, it will not only remind you of your magical intent, but it will also recharge the spell. So this is really, really good for spells that you want to have on the long term. So this is more of a slow burn type of a spell than it is like a quick flash pop. Although you could certainly do that too by slightly modifying your magical intent.
I would argue that a cell phone background spell is the slow burn long game spell, and the posting on your Instagram stories is the fastest flash in the pan style spell. Yeah. Because those are gone in 24 hours, and then you got to do it again. You know? So
exactly.
Like, that's a thing that you could very easily do.
Yeah.
As well as, because you can save stories, you could make a book. These are all such good ideas. How have I not thought of any of this before? You could make like saved stories folder on your cell phone that's just like a grimoire or a book of shadows or whatever, spells or whatever. And every time you do one of those spells, you save it there, like for perpetuity's sake or whatever the word is for
that. Yeah. And you can reference back to it pretty easily.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah.
That's some technomantic spells or whatever that we came up with. Obviously these are written by us. This is our ideas.
Yep.
But they're for you to also use freely. For anybody to use freely. So, all right, next up is correspondences.
That's right. So these correspondences are specifically associated with technology and technomancy. But if you are doing something that is geared for a specific intent, like money or love or creativity or whatever, obviously you can use those correspondences either in addition to or instead of these correspondences. So animals that we would associate with technomancy would be the bee, cow, giraffe, owls, and spiders. And much like with all of the correspondences, this is just a short list of the correspondences because this podcast is not me just reading a list.
Yeah. The full list will be on the Book of Shadows page for this podcast, available on our Patreon.
Yes. So colors would be black, orange, or white. Yep. Green is a common color that people associate with this, but I would venture to say only use green if that's part of your magical color intention.
Yeah. It's just because a lot of PCBs are green. Yeah. But they're not all green. Blue, white, black. I've seen purple PCBs.
Yeah.
So
as far as stones go, amber, apatite, clear quartz, selenite, snowflake obsidian, sunstone are all great stones to use, but please avoid lodestones and any other magnetic stone or metal.
Yeah, don't put magnets on your computer. Yeah, don't do that.
Or your phone. And that, I mean, John just talked about how he uses like a magnetic pop
The
socket,
iPhone is specifically designed with a magnet on its back already.
Yeah.
So I didn't put that there.
Don't put magnets where magnets don't belong.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. You will straight erase your computer if you are unsafe with that.
Yeah.
Or like wreck your speakers. I had a laptop as a teen that if you put like a magnet or something like even mildly magnetic too near the front of it, the speakers stopped working. And it's because the speakers were like very, very weak and mounted right at the surface. And so anything magnetic near the front, I used to play with those little magnetic neodymium iron boron balls, those like tiny little magnetic spheres that you could like crunch and make like shapes with and stuff like that. I used to fidget with those all the time before they became like illegal to buy in the US or whatever. But anytime it like rolled too near the speakers, the sound would just like cut out. And it's because it would like slam the speaker all the way forward and then they wouldn't work at all. Yeah. So like, be careful with magnets near your computers. Even if your computer says it's safe, be careful, man.
Yeah. 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 For plants, we've got acorns, allspice, balsam fir, cinnamon, cornflower, carnation, eyebright, lotus, mint, rowan, sunflower, and yucca. And just sort of like a word here, obviously don't put plants on inside of your computer or inside of your phone. But what you can do is you can have images of them. Perhaps you could have a plant near your computer. If you're like a tea drinker, maybe you can have some cinnamon flavored tea while you're doing some technomancy. A lot of things kind of are a little bit different here, but you can still see that some of the same things exist. And sort of the same thing goes for food. So foods is something that you can use as correspondences too. So in particular, coffee, salt, strawberries are all strongly associated with technology. And I would also say Mountain Dew.
Yeah, I would argue Code Red is probably more technomantically powered a beverage than just about any other beverage, except for maybe coffee. Let me tell you what, coffee is the lifeblood of like the American industry. So
when I came across coffee and was like, that definitely works, I cackled out loud.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah, I drink a lot of coffee. So
yeah. And then for deities, there are some deities that definitely work for this too, and that would be Apollo, Hephaestus, Isis, Odin, Pandora, Thoth, and I would also venture to say Neo from The Matrix.
Yeah, sure, why not?
As well as pretty much anybody else that you can sort of think of that is
well, and
pop culture.
You're thinking of like named pop culture deities, but there's also the interpretation that is sort of like vaguely elucidated in the American Gods, where like the internet is its own deity.
Yeah, it's called a technology boy.
Yeah. Or like obviously, so there's like the internet, but then there's also like to reference the Hyperion Kantos, there's the data sphere of the world, which is basically the internet, but it's a bit more complicated than that. It's all of the connected. Oh my god, I've never seen that light fail before. All of the connected. Well, yeah, not that way though. Computers all together as like one greater knowledge base. Yeah. So, definitely that would count as well.
Yeah, you can also do sort of like ancestor worship with anybody in particular that's gifted with technology, whether that's someone you know or knew personally, or whether that's a historical type of figure associated with that. Yeah. And then lastly, miscellaneous things. So circuits, of course, and like circuit boards, anything like that could be used. Obviously, don't use the ones that are inside of your working machines.
Yeah. Unless you know what you're doing.
Yeah. Also, the crown chakra would be associated with technology. And again, avoid magnetic objects and also avoid liquids.
Yeah. It's a computer still.
It's still
be
an
smart.
electronic device.
You know what you're missing on deities, and you should write down is the great and powerful Woz.
Oh
yeah, Steve Wozniak. Dude, there's legit at least one religion that worships that guy. Like at least one. Yeah, the great and powerful Woz. That guy, he's definitely like a god tier technologist to a lot of people. So yeah, but okay, so that was correspondences, correspondi. At least some of them. The larger list will be available on our Patreon. Yeah, on the Book of Shadows page for this one. Speaking of Patreon, let's thank our patrons, Al, Miranda, Helena, Jeff, and Alexa.
And Adrian.
You guys are awesome. So keep being awesome, guys. Next up, we have our Pub Chat episode 7, which is coming out on the 18th-ish. So, sometimes those are late. But so submit questions. If you have any questions about anything magical or whatever, send us some questions. You can hit us up on social media or on the website. There is some forms and shit.
Go to nerdjive.com/links and you can find a ton of ways to contact us to ask questions, which we will then answer.
Just leave a comment below in the YouTube video. So that way you can, because I read all of those, 100% of them. No questions. So yeah, you can always do that there. And then after that is Beltane 102.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's that time of year again.
Yeah, so Beltane 102, guys. Stay tuned for that. That's going to be fun. But yeah, Technomancy is really interesting. I would love to hear any of your opinions and thoughts on it. So please share those. Remember, everybody, this is a cool space. Everybody do peace. Don't forget, that's our thing. We do peace here. So don't be a ass, man. Don't be a ass. Everybody's allowed to think what they want to think, and that's fine. I just want to know other people's opinions, because generally that's how people should learn, is by from others. Who'da thunk?
Yeah.
But yeah, either way, I've been John Norgrove. This has been Julie Norgrove. This has been the Horn
and Cauldron
podcast, and we will catch you guys on the flip side. Let's see. Don't forget to like this video, comment below, share, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff. Let your friends know about us, because we're awesome. Let's all be friends together.
Yeah, help us get 8 listeners.
Yeah, help us get that sweet
looking for listener
number 8. How you doing? Caller number 8, what are you doing tonight?
Don't scare them away.
Yeah, right.
Before they're even here, stop.
They're just like, no, never mind. Delete, unsubscribe. But yeah, I think that's everything. Yeah. Stay magical, folks.
Yeah. And don't forget, breathe in self-confidence and breathe out self-doubt.